Welcome to the Personal Podcast, the podcast where we get to meet the real person behind the professional. I'm excited to have Dominic Colenso in the studio today. Dominic is a keynote speaker, author, and former Thunderbird. So let's start with the former Thunderbird, Dominic. How did it feel to star as Virgil Tracy in the Thunderbirds movie?
So I had been out of drama school for about 6 months when the audition for Thunderbirds came along, and obviously, every young actor is waiting for their big break. Yeah. It was a massive, iconic part of my childhood, reconnecting with the Puppet series when it was shown on BBC Two. So all of a sudden, this opportunity just to audition for it was kind of mind-blowing because it was a different level to the parts that I had been auditioning for up until that point. And then to actually go on and land the role was just a dream come true. I mean, we had an amazing cast. Sir Ben Kingsley playing the evil hood. Bill Paxton, a great American actor who's no longer with us, was playing our dad. As a band of brothers, the five of us gelled really well. We had Sophia Miles and Ron Cook playing Lady Penelope and Parker. And it was just a huge amount of fun. It was directed by Jonathan Frakes, who played Riker in Star Trek, if anyone remembers the Star Trek series. And so he was an actor who knew how to work with actors. And so as a director, his whole kind of process was just to make everyone as relaxed and as at ease as possible. So it was a dream job, absolute dream job.
Oh, it sounds amazing. And how did you feel when you found out you got the part?
I kind of remember being really shocked because it was such a competitive process. The final audition round, I walked into the Universal Pictures casting office in central London, and there was a room of people that looked just like me. So I didn't necessarily expect that I was going to get this. The audition went really well, and I was hopeful. But when I got that phone call, it was just like, oh my goodness, what has just happened? And I didn't really want to tell anyone until I got the contract.
Didn't believe it.
Because I didn't want to, jinx it. So I waited for the piece of paper to come through until I started telling anyone outside my immediate family.
So what is the process when you kind of land a big deal like that? Do you get a contract? Then do you get the script?
Yeah, so I mean, I'd seen the script during the audition process, but then the contracts come through. As a nobody actor, you just sign the piece of paper as quickly as you possibly can. You don't argue on that stuff particularly. But then there's a whole kind of pre-production process that starts to happen. You're reintroduced to the director. You go to a read through costume fittings. We were assigned personal trainers, so we had to start kind of working out more often. It was wonderful. Bill Paxton, who was playing our dad, decided that he wanted to get everyone together before we started filming. And I remember walking through central London one afternoon, and I had a phone call on my mobile number that I didn't recognize. And this voice said in an American accent, "Virgil, it's your dad." And I was like, oh, God, one of my friends is playing a prank on me. And I was like, what? And then I walked under an underpass and lost signal. And then went, oh my God, that was probably Bill Paxton. And luckily he phoned me back. and he invited all of us to come and hang out with him in his massive hotel suite in central London, and we all went out for dinner and drinks, and that was just amazing because it just kicked things off with exactly the right kind of tone, and we just had a blast.
Wow, it sounds unreal. Did it feel kind of like you were in a fantasy?
Being on set for those sorts of movies is like being at a theme park. So you sit on Thunderbird 3, for example, and you're kind of strapped into your chair and you press a button and it lights up, and the whole set is on a gimbal, so it's moving as you're taking off. You're literally feeling the kind of G-force going. And then I was doing scenes, rescues on oil rigs with stunt people throwing themselves all over the place and fire and wind machines. And it's just amazing, absolutely amazing.
And so you got to literally like play with all of the models.
Yeah, absolutely. And when they, when things were on fire, they were on fire. And when you were using a fire extinguisher, it was putting out the flames.
Wow.
It was just absolutely the attention to detail from the set designers and the props makers was unreal. We all had helmets, for example, when we were flying the spacecraft, and we had to go in and have our heads put into plaster cast and a mold made, straws up your nostrils so you could breathe, so that everything fitted you absolutely perfect. So nothing was left to chance.
There must have been moments where it was really hard work though as well. Was it long hours on set?
Yeah, I mean, there is a very kind of glamorous outer world of being on a movie set and a very unglamorous reality. They're long days. Quite often you're waiting around for hours and hours between takes, especially when there are things like pyrotechnics and those sorts of things involved. They don't want to do more than one take. This was shot back in the day before digital cameras, so it was on film. Time was literally money. Costs a lot of money to do a second take, but also they were blowing things up. So you only get one chance of doing that. Otherwise, the whole process is going to be massively delayed. So as an actor, you have to be ready to go when the director shouts action, but you can have been sitting around for 3 or 4 hours before that moment. Yeah. So it's quite a challenge to kind of keep yourself in the zone.
I can imagine that's quite draining.
Yeah, it can be.
Yeah, and you've got hundreds of lines to learn. How did you manage to learn them all?
So in Thunderbirds in particular, I was blessed in that sense. I didn't have a huge amount of lines that I had to learn. But what does happen is that the lines quite often change. So you get given the original script, and then as things progress, and this happened on all of the TV and film jobs that I did, pages would be inserted. So you'd be like, okay, we're on orange pages today or green pages. And so you would sometimes get those the night before, but sometimes you'd be given updates in the car on the way to the studio. So then you're having to think, okay, how do I relearn this, or how do I change that? So yeah, it's quite a high pressure environment.
Yeah, definitely. And how long did it take to produce the film?
So the whole film, I think the actual shooting of the film was around 3-4 months. Okay. And then it goes into post-production for about the same length of time. So there's a lot of time spent editing, putting in the special effects, obviously creating the score. And then there's normally a kind of window between the end of post-production and the actual thing being released out into the world. So I think we were probably almost a year from shooting to release, something like that.
And did you have just as much fun promoting the film? Yeah,
I mean, it was kind of ridiculous. We were movie stars for this kind of little window of time. The film was at the time the biggest budget British film that had ever been made. Wow. It was obviously, for the UK market, incredibly iconic. Some Thunderbirds fans loved it. Some Thunderbirds fans hated it. But we had Busted doing the theme tune. All sorts of stuff going on. So the premiere in Leicester Square was amazing. Then we got on a flight the next day and flew to Tokyo to go and promote the film over there, and we were doing all sorts of crazy game shows, wrestling sumo wrestlers and all sorts of weirdness. So it was just an absolute kind of roller coaster for a good few months.
How did you feel being a movie star?
I think the moment that it hit home was getting out of the car in Leicester Square and walking out onto the red carpet, and all of a sudden hearing people screaming your name, which was just weird. Yeah. Because 40 minutes earlier, I'd been in a bar in the centre of town where we'd met to be picked up, and I was no one. And all of a sudden I was someone, and that was quite a hard thing to kind of get your head around. But the fans were amazing, and it was just a brilliant experience.
Did you like people shouting your name?
There's a massive ego buzz to feeling like you're important in that way. But what was most gratifying was actually speaking to people afterwards that had really enjoyed the film, because that's what it's about. It's about giving the audience that experience.
Does anyone ever get in touch today? Do you still have any fans?
So there are a lovely group of people that still are big, fans of the original movie, and so even 20 years on, I still get the odd kind of tag on Instagram or on Twitter. And also there's a whole kind of new generation of people that are coming to see the movie as these things inevitably kind of get their second wind, when the people that were kids watching it are now becoming parents and showing their children it. So
it's probably due to come back around again, I think,
probably.
Thunderbirds. Because I remember my parents always watched it, and then they were delighted when I was then watching it, and then I'm sure it's due to come back around, like all the classics, as you say.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Do you ever get bored of talking about it?
I don't actually. I'm so lucky to have had that opportunity that it would be remiss of me to be miserable about it.
How did your friends react?
Everyone was massively supportive. I've been blessed with my friendship group through the years, who have, whatever I've turned my hand to, have always had my back. So it was lovely to sort of share that experience with them, but also lovely to have a bit of normality and grounding to come out of that sort of silliness, because it is quite silly, having to come into the back entrance of hotels because you can't walk through the front door is madness. So just to get home and say, do you want to come over and watch the rugby and have a beer, was quite nice.
What was the most memorable moment of everything?
I think I probably alluded to it already, that premiere was when it really hit home. So walking down the red carpet was one thing, but then sitting in the cinema, watching the screen go black, the Universal Pictures logo come on, and that's a tune, an image that most of us are familiar with, and then to see your name in the credits was a real kind of goosebumps.
Oh, definitely. Oh, it must have felt incredible. Yeah. Would you say that's been the high of your acting career?
I think I've had a lot of different opportunities and different experiences. So it's certainly a high of my acting career. I'm a massive theatre fan. I trained as a kind of serious theatre actor rather than a superhero. So to do some of the theatre jobs that I've done, where you get that immediate feedback from the audience, is really special as well. But it's certainly up there in the top 2 or 3.
So did you prefer theatre to kind of film?
I'm not sure it's prefer. They're just very, very different.
Okay. Yeah.
You're less in control of your performance as a TV and film actor, because ultimately the editor decides what ends up on screen. Whereas in the theatre, every night it's slightly different, and you're in charge of how that plays out.
Yes.
So there's something very kind of thrilling and exciting about being on stage in a way that you can think on a TV or film set that you've absolutely nailed it, and that is the definitive take that they should use, and then you'll discover that there was an aeroplane flying in the background and they've had to cut it for sound reasons, and they've gone with something else, or they decided to focus on the other actor when you were doing that amazing bit of acting.
How dare they?
Yeah, exactly. So you can't control those things, whereas in the theatre, it's a bit more tangible.
Absolutely. I often think as an audience member of the theatre, you're almost the director creating your own moments, because you can choose who to look at, which facial expression, when, where. Yeah. So it's an interesting perspective. You mentioned on your website that you lost $1 million before age 26. I just wanted to know more of a narrative around that.
So I always say that I'm one of probably the only person that's flown a spaceship, lost $1 million and been fired by Simon Cowell. And the $1 million piece actually refers to the Thunderbirds experience. So not only was it amazing to get cast as Virgil Tracy, but I also signed $1 million contract. In fact, it was more than $1 million contract because I signed a 3-movie deal. So the first movie we got paid, a very normal amount of money for. It was just like having a job, to be perfectly honest. Nothing life changing, but really kind of lovely to be employed like that for 3 or 4 months. We then, as part of that package, had signed up for $250,000 if they filmed and made movie number 2, and $1 million if they made movie number 3. And all the way through the process of creating that first film, all of the feedback and the noise coming back from the producers and the studio and the director was, we are definitely making episodes 2 and episode 3. And so we left the set of Thunderbirds with no doubt that we were coming back in 6 months' time to make the next one. Unfortunately, whilst it did really well in the UK market and the European market, and very well in Japan, it just didn't capture the American audience, and there are a number of reasons why I think that might be the case. But within a couple of weeks of us getting back from all of the promo, it became very clear on the numbers that were coming back from the States that episode 2 and 3 probably weren't going to happen. So all of a sudden you've gone from, wow, I'm a movie star, this is happening. The trajectory of the next, at least 2, if not 5 years of my life are completely kind of mapped out. I'm going to have a load of money. I'm going to have all of these options to, that job's finished. I need to find another job because I've got to pay my rent, and all of that stuff isn't happening. So it was a real kind of, test, I think. And I believe I passed. I mean, I'm still here.
You're doing very well.
But I had to really kind of, work through what does that mean for me, and how do I hold my head up high, because I've done something that I'm really proud of, but I didn't get the opportunity to do the next installment. Yeah,
you can see how that can really impact someone's life, and you can see how it could send someone on a downward trajectory. So what were your next steps hearing that news?
We kind of regrouped as friends, so with the other actors that were in the film, but also just with my friendship group, and everyone put a kind of arm around me for that. It wasn't devastating. It was just, okay, this isn't going to happen now. So what next? And then the focus naturally shifts to, okay, well, if that door's closed, what other doors are available?
Yes.
And you relatively quickly, I had to get back in the saddle, start going out for auditions, and try and find another path to get to where I wanted to go.
Mm-hmm. The role of auditions seems demoralising.
It depends on the director and the casting director. So sometimes, even when you don't get the part, you were getting feedback and you were building a relationship, and so you'd walk away and your agent would phone the next day and say they're not going to offer you this, but they really liked you and they've got something coming up, and so that was fine. The ones that were a little bit kind of soul destroying were the commercial castings, where you were again sitting in a room of, Thunderbirds was maybe 10, 15 people that looked like me. Commercial castings, there could be 50 people in a room, and you got 2 minutes in front of the camera, and you look down the lens and say your name, and then turn to the side so they can see your side profile, and if you're going to be taking your shirt off, take your shirt off, and it's all very kind of transactional. And then it's literally next, and you'll never hear, there was no feedback, no nothing, so that they were tough.
My cousin does that, and she does find it very difficult.
It is. I think you just have to tune out from any kind of artistic endeavor, and also just not take that personally. It's literally nothing to do with you.
Yes.
It's only to do with how you look.
Absolutely. And as well, you're kind of trying to fit an image that someone else has in their own mind.
Yeah.
And if you don't fit that, you can't do anything about it.
And especially if you don't know what that image is, because they can't really properly articulate it. So they're just doing a kind of scattergun casting in the hope of finding the right person.
Yes. And did other work come along quite quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. I was, very, very lucky. I also had a real interest in directing. So cool. that was probably where my fallback was actually to start making my own work and directing my own shows. I was teaching acting as well, some of the drama schools in London. So I had other strings to my bow, which I think kind of made that transition a bit easier.
Brilliant. Personal isn't just about business. It's about the human stories behind them. We address all aspects of health, from cancer, gastric bands and meningitis to mental health and the menopause. Nothing is off limits on this show. But as these stories often highlight, you can't take your health for granted. I know I don't, and that's why I trust WPA to protect my health. WPA isn't like any other health insurer. It's not for profit and offers award-winning, tailored health insurance solutions to individuals, families, and businesses of all sizes. Among UK health insurers, it consistently tops consumer surveys and Trustpilot ratings, while its members can manage their membership from pre-authorising claims to accessing remote GP services, all on the WPA Health app. Crucially, they help ensure the access to the very best treatment at a time and place that is convenient to you. I speak with Martin Nichols, one of the 90-plus dedicated WPA healthcare partners across Britain, who provides advice and ongoing support during your journey with WPA. Contact Martin anytime on 07870 513 653 to discuss your requirements. Martin Nichols, appointed representative of WPA Healthcare Practice plc, authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. The healthcare practice is a wholly owned subsidiary of Western Provident Association Limited, WPA. And so did you end up meeting Simon Cowell?
So Simon was a creative consultant on a show that I filmed several years after Thunderbirds called Rock Rivals, which was an ITV drama and a sort of fictional version of The X Factor. Okay. And I got cast as the lead contestant, essentially. So the premise was that two of us the show would follow the contestants behind the scenes and show you all the bits that you don't really see when you're watching the real thing. But you would see the highs and the lows, the personal relationships, the affairs that were going on, and all of that sort of stuff. It was made by the people that made Footballers' Wives, so you kind of got got the vibe. Yeah, so it was great fun. Yeah. Not taking itself too seriously. Cool. But I was going to be one of the contestants that went right through to the final, and it was going to be me or a female artist. We were both simultaneously working with record producers out in Ireland. We were working with one of the guys that had done some work with Westlife, and we were going to essentially put the final episode to a vote. So the idea was that the audience would vote on who they wanted to win, and therefore the winning episode would be shot. You'd shoot two alternative endings, and the winner would then release their single into the UK singles charts. So I mean, it was really silly. And a lot of fun. And I was working on the show out in Ireland, living out there, and we had filmed for I think about 5 or 6 weeks. By this point, we got a couple of episodes in the can. Director's really happy, producer's really happy. And one day I got a message to say, Dominic, we don't need you tomorrow. And that was quite unusual because I was one of the lead actors. I was in pretty much every scene. But I just thought, fantastic, finally get a day off because we've been working really hard. So I decided to go into Dublin and to treat myself to some new workout gear because I was in the gym all the time. And while I was walking around town, my mobile went and it was the producer, and she said, "Hi Dominic, we're having a cast meeting. Can you get back to your apartment?" And I said to her, "Look, I'm just out right now, first day off. Can I negotiate maybe another hour and then I'll get?" And she was like, "Okay, fine." So I walked back into our apartment building, and all the cast were staying in the same block, and there was a sort of square in the middle, so you could stand in the middle of the apartment complex and sort of see where everyone else was. And I noticed that no other lights were on. I was like, that's weird. I thought we were having a cast meeting. Oh, well. So I went into my apartment. At that time, I was working on a song for the show. So I was, practicing, playing the piano, singing away. Where is everyone? This is weird. Tried to phone the producer, nothing. Bit more singing, learning some lines. And then all of a sudden my English mobile went and I saw the number on it and it was my agent. And I was like, ooh.
Did you instantly know?
This shouldn't be happening. Something really weird is about to happen. So I took the call and Claire explained to me that they had decided that they were going to pay me out of my contract. So essentially what had happened is Simon had been a creative consultant. He'd seen some of the rushes and he decided that he didn't think that I looked right for the part. He is Simon Cowell. At the time, his stuff was all over the TV. And so he sort of said, well, it's either you recast this guy, he's a good actor, but he's just not right, or I'm going to have to take my name off the show. And so they understandably went with Simon rather than with me. So unfortunately, I packed my suitcase, shut my curtains, had a good cry, and got on the plane home the next day. And the production company shipped all my stuff back to the UK. So I never saw Simon. No. And if I met him now, I'd love to have a conversation with him, not in a kind of confrontational way, but it's fascinating. I bet he doesn't even remember making that decision.
These life-changing decisions for other people. And it's almost, do you just sometimes think, why? Oh goodness, that sounds demoralizing.
Again, another kind of time in my life, and I think everyone has these times in their lives where you have to sit with the disappointment.
I agree.
And then inevitably work out what you're going to do next, and that doesn't have to be immediate, and it doesn't have to be spectacular, but life goes on. So.
I know. I think it's important we talk about sometimes the disappointments or failures though, because quite often you just see the success stories.
Exactly. And you can look at people and you can go, they're an overnight success. Well, that's very, very rarely true. I know that many people will look at what I do now and go, oh yeah, he's got a book out and it's his second book and he's got a YouTube channel and there are 25,000 people subscribed. And it's like, yes, and I've been doing this for nearly 15 years.
Yes.
So you might be seeing me for the first time, but there's been a lot of work in the background to get to where I am.
Absolutely.
Right now.
Always the case, unless you're extremely lucky.
Yeah.
Was that the lowest point of your career, would you say?
I think it was certainly one of the toughest things that I've had to deal with. I mean, and it wasn't life or death, right? It was just a job. And sometimes that is hard to kind of process. And it'd be untruthful of me to say, oh yes. And as soon as they said, I just thought, well, it was just a job. It doesn't matter. I didn't. It was devastating. It hurts. But really, it's so insignificant in the grand scheme of things that it's probably not worth dwelling on.
Yeah, but I think you learn more lessons in failures or disappointments than you do in success. Yeah. What did you learn from that experience? I
think I learned, for me, that I actually wanted to find a way to be more hands-on in terms of my career. So I didn't stop being an actor immediately. I still continued to audition and to work. But what I did decide to do is I decided to put other tools into my toolkit. So I really started to develop my directing career, and it was around that sort of time that the opportunity came to start working with businesses. And I suddenly thought, oh, this is something where I'm less at the mercy of random decisions happening hundreds of miles away by people that I've never met. So that was a decision for me that was like, I think probably I want to be more hands-on, and I hesitate to use the word in control because I don't think we're ever necessarily in control.
True.
But to just have a little bit more agency around those things.
To take it back to the Thunderbirds analogy, like less like a puppet, I suppose.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And did you find that your acting skills were really transferable to the commercial world?
Yeah, massively. And I think I'm probably a much better actor now if I went back and did it than I was then, because I've really kind of doubled down and understood the process behind those things. I'm much more kind of relaxed than I was back then. I take it all much less seriously than I did back then. But it's very obvious to me that those things that great actors do well, that sense of presence, that sense of connection, that sense of being able to improvise and adapt in the moment, are all skills that we can all benefit from.
Absolutely, 100% agree. And I've got more questions on that relating to personal lives as well, because I don't think we fully use our communication skills to our best advantage.
No.
But just one more question on a couple more questions on the acting side. Do you wish you were still an actor today?
No, I can categorically say that I don't kind of wake up in the night dreaming of being back on stage. I mean, to a certain extent, I scratch that itch when I'm speaking.
True,
so next week I'm on stage in front of 500, 600 people for an hour, and it's a one-man show, right? I mean, there's a different agenda there, but there is an element of what I'm doing that is educating, and there's also an element of what I'm doing that is entertaining, because those two things are kind of, symbiotic when it comes to a great kind of conference or meeting presentation. Yeah. So I still get to do it, I think. And maybe when I'm 65, 70 and I've got nothing else to do, I might dust it all off and try again. But it's not a kind of burning desire.
No, okay. That is interesting, though. It's a career that you can have for life, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's nothing to stop. If anyone's watching this episode, but if someone said
Simon watches it,
yeah, exactly, and says we're gonna do that thing again. But if someone came along and said, like, I'd really love you to do this, and I read it and went, oh wow, that looks really interesting. Like, why not? It'd be fun. But I'm not strategically pursuing that.
That makes sense. And I just wondered your thoughts on how the film industry is changing with AI, and even if actors will have parts to play in the future.
I hope they will. I mean, what we go to the cinema for, what we go to the theatre for, is human connection. And to have the catharsis of experiencing other people's emotions. And if we outsource that to the robots, I think the industry will die, because I think people won't have that same experience, and therefore will start tuning out and going elsewhere.
They're saying that we won't be able to tell.
I've really struggled to believe that. We might not be able to see, but I think we can feel.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I feel the same way as you. And yeah, hopefully it won't. Let's see. So another art that you're excellent at is writing. You have your 2 books on the table in front of us. Could you let us know a little brief synopsis of each?
Yes. So my first book was written in 2019. It's called Impact: How to Be More Confident, Increase Your Influence, and Know What to Say Under Pressure. And that was an opportunity for me to distill those kind of acting fundamentals really into a toolkit that you can use in everyday communication, whether you are delivering a big presentation, whether you're asking your boss for a pay rise, or to a certain extent, and I give no guarantees for this, but speaking with your kids and your family members. It's about helping you understand the levers that you have at your disposal and what you can turn up and what you can turn down. Cut through the pitch and presentation playbook, which comes out on the 2nd of December, is much more focused on the medium of the formal presentation, whether that is in a kind of sales context, in a pitch, whether that is a presentation in a meeting or a TED talk or standing up in front of your colleagues or your classmates. But what I've done there is I've used the same kind of ideas that underpinned impact, but put them through that presentation lens.
Okay.
And I share in Cut Through a real step-by-step methodology for what you should do in order to craft and deliver a pitch or a presentation that really connects with your audience.
Both sound very interesting, especially for what I do. Was it a lengthy writing process?
It was about 9 months, I think, for Cut Through.
Not too bad.
A lot of early mornings, a lot of weekends where I should have been hanging out with the family and I was sitting in front of a computer. So writing something and having a day job is a really challenging experience. And, obviously it was a choice. No one forced me to do it. So it's I take full responsibility for that. But there was a lot of sacrifice in order to get those words onto the page. Yeah.
I bet. I've got massive respect for anyone who carves out that time, especially when they have another career. Why did you feel they needed to be written?
So the first book was there as a calling card because I wanted to differentiate myself and I wanted to, put a stake in the ground to say this is how I see things. There are plenty of very good presentation skills and communication coaches out there. There are many people that have a similar, acting background to me that share their approach. But I really wanted to formalize my thinking and be able to share that with the world. And it's a very, very strategically from a business development perspective, it's a very good calling card to say, this is what I do. Have a flick through, see if you like it, if it resonates with you. Let's have a conversation. So that was very kind of strategic in that sense. Cut Through, it kind of felt like I hadn't said anything new for 5 or 6 years. So I've been using the impact methodology and talking about that in podcasts, in interviews, when I was speaking on stage. But I had started to develop the kind of Cut Through methodology with my clients, and it was kind of hidden from view.
Okay, yeah.
And so it just kind of came to a tipping point where I thought, do you know what? Now's the right time. I'm confident enough in these ideas and that they work to put this out into the world and to share it with a wider audience.
Yeah, and they're incredible PR tools as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Do you have plans to write another one?
If I say yes on this podcast and my wife hears it, I'll be in trouble. So at the moment, the answer is no.
Absolutely not. Okay, no. Speaking of other books that other people have written, has there been a book that's had the biggest impact on you in your life?
I think, and I'm very privileged because he has given an endorsement for my book, but I think Daniel Priestley's work is probably the work that has had the biggest impact on my business.
Okay.
So Key Person of Influence is a fabulous sort of starting point, but Oversubscribed is a really, it's just a masterclass in how to generate a market and views for the thing that you're doing. So I'd say Daniel has been really kind of instrumental in shaping my thinking and how I've approached business, and those two books have had a big impact.
I love his books. Brilliant. Okay, so let's talk a little bit now about communication in personal lives and family life.
Again, I'm going to caveat this. Like anyone with kids knows that there's always going to be curveballs. So I'm not going to say this stuff is guaranteed to work, but I think they're really good fundamentals from which to jump off.
Kids are the toughest audience, aren't they?
Absolutely. And they'll tell you if it's not working before anyone else.
Absolutely. So what communication skill do you think is one of the most important skills out there?
Listening.
Yeah.
Full stop. I think Stephen Covey in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which is a kind of masterclass classic from the 80s in terms of leadership development and personal development, says seek first to understand, then to be understood. And I think that's everything. If you haven't listened, then you shouldn't speak.
Yeah, so true. But it's just so crazy, the paradox. They say the same with writing. You know, to improve your writing, you need to read. Yeah. To improve your speaking, you need to listen. It's just all interesting how it's often the opposite. The opposite. Yeah, absolutely. But it's so true. And would you say that's where a lot of humans go wrong, in the fact that they don't listen, or are there any other kind of communication fails?
I think the problem with listening is that there are different types of listening as well.
True.
And so I think sometimes we are in kind of the mode of listening to respond, and sometimes, and hopefully more productively and profitably, we're in the mode of listening to understand. And even within that distinction, there's more granularity. So the more you can just be with the other person and listen with your eyes as well as your ears, the more you're going to connect with what's actually going on.
Yes.
So I think sometimes we fail in communication because we fail to pick up the subtext. And that can often be because we're in broadcast mode rather than receive mode.
Totally. I totally agree with that. And almost listening with your heart rather than listening with your head.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes we lead so much with our minds and we overthink every situation, but if we just go with our feelings, you know, that can get you in trouble as well. But, you know, it's just to like truly show compassion.
Yeah.
I mean, listening as a podcast interview is a whole other skill.
Yeah, completely different ball game.
Yeah, you're trying to do all that as well as then plan the next question and make sure you're producing a good podcast. So yeah, that kind of blows my mind a little bit, trying to talk about listening and listening at the same time. How can schools better help children develop stronger communication skills?
I think it actually comes through play.
Oh, yeah.
I think there's a danger of thrusting kids into the spotlight and ruining that experience for them for life. I work with a lot of people that are, you know, very senior and have, you know, advanced well in their career. But when you dig into the thing that stops them speaking in public in the way that they would like, or being able to connect with the audience in the way that they would like, it often stems back to some horrific experience back at school where they felt incredibly exposed and felt like they didn't have the kind of tools that they needed to be able to be their best in that situation. It worries me. We're going off on a slightly different tangent right now, but it worries me how many schools are kind of cutting down their playtimes to finish school earlier, to reduce the bad behaviour and actually it's like those moments of unstructured play are where the magic happens.
Yeah.
When I'm working with clients on their pitches and their presentations, if I can get them out of their heads and into their bodies, suddenly interesting angles occur and new ideas pop up. So I think for me, it all starts with play.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I hadn't thought of it like that, but so true. There was that saying, I think, when I was younger, that children should be seen and not heard, you know, which isn't great for developing communication skills. Another kind of thing I wanted to run by is this phrase of toxic kindness at the moment, you know, where people are selective with the truth. So, you know, short term people feel great, but longer term, they're probably not acting in their best interests. Do you agree with that? And do you have any tips on how to perhaps communicate a harsh truth?
I think we owe it to our audience to be honest. So if you're sugarcoating things because you don't feel like you have the skills or the tools to be able to communicate that thing, then you're doing the person you're speaking to and yourself a disservice. Feedback is really difficult.
It is.
But it doesn't have to be negative, and it doesn't have to destroy the relationship. In Impact, I share a framework that's really useful from a feedback perspective, which is EPIC. So you start with evidence rather than kind of getting into the emotion and talking about how you feel and I'm really disappointed in you, or whatever it might be. You start with the facts. Last Thursday, when we were in X meeting, you said this, or you were 10 minutes late, or that project that was meant to be delivered on Thursday arrived on Monday. Like stuff that could stand up in a court of law.
Yeah.
And if between you can agree the facts and the evidence, then you have a basis to have the rest of the conversation on. The challenge is quite often that our perception of reality is very often different from our audience's perception of reality. So we have to agree that common ground. And once the evidence is on the table, then you can move on to the next step, which is your position. So the P is position. And that's where you can say, do you know what? I feel really frustrated, or I feel really disappointed. And if you're using the I feel, no one can dispute that.
No.
If I say you made me feel,
Yes.
then I can say no, I didn't, or
Okay.
that wasn't my intention. But if I say I feel really frustrated right now, that lands in a different way with the person that you're talking to. And then the next step, once the kind of position is on the table, but people understand the feeling, is the ideal. So what are you looking for? What change in behavior do you want to see? And then finally, the consequences. And this is where, you can use the carrot and the stick. So you can say, if you are able to do this, then X, Y, and Z will happen. And if you're not able to do this, then, maybe we're going to have another conversation, or make this a more kind of formal written warning, or, whatever it might be. But what I found in a professional capacity, but also in a personal capacity, is that if you walk through those 4 steps, it takes the heat out of the argument. It makes things less emotional. The emotion is still there, but there's a much more kind of logical flow. And you never just go, evidence, position, ideal, consequences, and it just flows 1, 2, 3, 4.
Sounds too easy.
There's kind of back and forth,
Yes.
but you shouldn't move on to the next step until you've completed the one you're on.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that wisdom
Pleasure.
with me. And finally, how do you feel your balance of, your work-life balance is at the moment?
So my wife has a phrase which I really love. She was a professional dancer, and she talks about tilting.
Okay.
And I think for me, it's never static. I'm always tilting in one direction or
yes,
tilting
yeah.
in the other. And as long as you're aware of that, I think it's fine. I know that right now with the book launch coming up and all of the kind of promotion and conversations that I'm having around that, work is very much where I'm tilting towards.
Okay.
And I know that when we hit the 18th of December, I need to tilt right back into family life, close the laptop, forget about everything else, and reconnect with that side. So I haven't found work-life balance. If anyone knows it's out there, then do send me an email. But for the time being, I'm just tilting with awareness.
Tilting with awareness, I like that. My way of kind of coping with it is just surrendering with the tilt, I suppose, which is the same thing, and just accepting that it's never always going to be right.
Yeah.
It's just like after Christmas when you've tilted far to the light side.
You're like, oh gosh.
Yeah, you've got to tilt back.
No more turkey.
Absolutely. Oh, they were wonderful answers. Thank you, Dominic. We've now got our regular questions before we finish. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best,
okay,
you need to rate yourself at the following 10 items.
Oh gosh.
Okay, how good looking are you?
5.
Interestingly, when you were a top actor, movie star, did you see yourself as more attractive?
Oh, no.
No? Okay. How funny are you?
3.
Okay. How good at cooking?
I'd say maybe a 7. And if you give me a good kind of recipe book to follow, then an 8.
Okay. That's best score so far.
Yeah.
How good at singing are you?
6.5 in the shower.
But you must be pretty good if you were in a singing show.
So it's really interesting. I think it's a muscle that you lose. I don't do it very often. So, I don't get me wrong. I'd love rocking out to whatever I'm listening to in the car, but I probably wouldn't inflict it on anyone else right now.
And do you drink alcohol?
I sometimes drink alcohol. Currently, I am drinking alcohol.
Okay, yeah, that's how I feel about it actually. And would you say you've got a good tolerance to it?
Unfortunately, I'm probably a 10 in terms
really?
of drinking.
Wow.
Well, not in terms of binging, but I can kind of handle it quite well. But also, as I've got older, I've noticed that it's just not worth it.
I know. Yeah, I don't drink. I used to really kind of drink a lot, but not very often. Just went on nights out, but I can't deal with any hangovers now.
And what the things you could do in your 20s that you can't do in your 40s.
I know. Parenting is probably something I couldn't have done in my 20s, but I do in my 40s, I think. How do you get on with parenting?
I hope that I would be a 7.
Okay, that's lovely.
I think I try my best, and I know that I'm not perfect.
At least you can communicate, you know.
Well, you have to ask my daughter whether that's true.
How good a friend are you?
I'd like to think I was an 8.
Oh, that's lovely. What about intelligence levels?
6.
Okay. Kindness?
7.5.
Okay. And finally, Dominic, how good at sex are you?
I couldn't possibly answer that question.
Fair enough. Thank you for being an excellent guest.
Thanks for having me.
Stories are at the heart of the Personal podcast, and we're so grateful for everyone who comes on and shares them. Stories are also at the heart of a strong PR campaign. And at Harvey and Hugo, we believe that everyone's story deserves a chance to be heard. That's why we're on a mission to give you a voice amplified through the power of story. Our stories are shared in the form of press releases, social media, content marketing, videography, photography, animation, graphic design, and podcasting. Our stories aren't just heard, they're shared, watched, clicked, but most importantly, they are felt. It's this stirring of emotions that cuts through the noise to light fires within people and activate them towards your purpose. So one question for you. Are you ready to share your story? Harvey and Hugo, your voice amplified.